So we come around to this side to see where I've kind of just loosely hung Earl's wheels. Tell me what you think. Welcome to the shop. My name's Jared. Tavarish is off doing Tavarish things, probably buying another car.
How did you know?
And this is Wrench Every Day. Behind me is our 1990 Nissan 300ZX, commonly known as Earl Leaker. And we've gotten the body kit.
All right. All right.
I stole an engine for it. Ugh. Whoops. We crunched that a little bit. It'll be all right. And today, we give him a suspension that's going to match the aggressive look on the car. Behind me on the table is the Silver's Neomax coilover suspension kit. The benefit of the coilover kit is it's going to let us lower the car while keeping a really good handling characteristic. People sometimes wonder why they're called a coilover. The coil spring sits over the shock absorber. Let's get this thing opened up, see what it looks like inside. There we go. Open up the box. I think we're a little late to the unboxing rage. First thing you get, a little bit of instructions, your adjustable wrenches, and I'm guessing these are going to be to hold the brake lines. Normally, the factory shocks will have a little tab, so my guess that's what those are for. Let's take a look at one of these. What's neat about this style of coilover, and when you're shopping, you want to look for one that's set up this way. This collar adjusts your spring preload. Changing your spring preload limits or increases the amount of shock travel based on the position of the spring. If you have it bound really high up, you're going to get very little travel in the shock absorber. When you lengthen it, you can have a lot of travel. If you have too little, you'll actually run into points of bottoming the shock absorber out, bouncing the car on corners. But if you have too much travel, it's going to kind of feel like a 4x4. But you come down here, you then have the adjustable shock height. By lengthening and shortening this section, this is how you're able to change your ride height without affecting your preload. Some older coilover systems, this is your ride height, this is all your adjustment. To get a car really low, you loosen it a lot, it just doesn't ride very well. So this is a little adjusting valve. It has small clicks to let you know you've changed a valve position. Inside the shock absorber, you have oil that acts as a restriction to a valve attached to the piston to the strut rod. When you hit a bump, valve goes against the oil. Kind of picture like if you're swimming and you slam your hand through water, that acts a restriction, slows you down. So it controls how much it comes in, and then as it starts to come back, that's the valve that this adjusts. The rebound, how quickly it can come back up and return to its normal static position. So you're able to change the rebound setting, and rebound is what you use to kind of fine-tune the wheel contact patch. If you have your rebound set to loose, so it's able to return very, very freely, come back to position quickly, you can actually get it to come up too fast. Your spring will then actually push back and kind of oscillate and send it back down, and you get a tire that'll bounce up and down on you. Not a good thing for performance handling. I think they're going to do really well. They come with a preset spring rate on your springs. You can custom tune if you know you're going to do performance handling and driving. You can pick a different spring rate. One neat thing too is rather than a complete solid mount here, there is a rubber bushing. When these are full hard mounted, you end up having a lot of noise transfer through the car. This is a hard mount with a rubber insulator. So it's going to keep it a little bit quieter, a little bit nicer on the street to drive day to day. Let's get a few things set up and get Earl some new suspension. And there we have the old suspension sitting next to their new counterparts. This looks like a progressively wound spring, meaning as it compresses more, the effective spring rate goes up. The progressive spring rates are set up so that way as you're driving around normally, it's nice and smooth, but when you're asking the shock to work and do a lot more, and the spring to go up and down a lot more, and the suspension's at max tilt, it's fighting back more to keep the car under control. When you start to first set your ride height, if you were to take your new coilover and drop it all the way down to the same level as your factory shocks, you're gonna have a monster 4x4. Also, when you're setting, most coilovers are gonna have a little sight hole. Whenever you're raising or lowering a car, you would want to always see threads here. This is your minimum amount of shock collar engagement into that coilover. Any less, you run the risk of actually breaking on extreme load. The rear doesn't have any sight holes. You are able to see the shock body underneath, and you can gauge roughly that same engagement as you're adjusting. So I'm going to do some measurements, try to kind of predict our initial ride height, get these thrown back into the car, and since I don't have wheels and tires, we won't actually set it down and get the final setup done, but we'll at least be able to get the shocks and coilovers reinstalled. All right, we have gone from these old and tired things to those nice new coilovers. This is going to help us, again, tune the suspension, keep it tight to the ground, and make it a little bit of a handling monster. Well, maybe not a monster, but a handling something. We need a few more suspension bits that may come a little bit later. I've not fully torqued the shock mounts, the control arm mounts yet, because we need to have it fully loaded on its suspension to be able to do that. We were mentioning in a couple of the previous episodes that this side had been hit in an accident and wasn't in the best shape. And while I was underneath doing suspension, I found a little more of that evidence. That big old crunch shouldn't quite be as crunchy, but it's all right. We'll straighten it a little bit, repair this rust, and get them back going. Obviously, to go with the new suspension, we need some wheels. I don't have tires, so we can't put it on the ground, and the wheels are supposed to come a little bit later in another episode, but Tavarish isn't here to stop me. Oh, don't mind that red spot. I recommend not headbutting your trunk while doing suspension. It hurts just a little bit. So we come around to this side to see where I've kind of just loosely hung Earl's wheels. Tell me what you think. We got some Koenig Ultraform, some gold colors already going for them. They're in 10.5 wide, 18 inch, so we're going to be able to run square. They're tucked just a little bit. They're plus 23. We're thinking 1.75 inch or a 2-inch spacer. We may raid the catalog, see if they've got something a little wider, or we just run these, because I actually kind of like the look. Let me know what you guys think. Maybe we change them up, maybe we keep them like they are, but they're looking pretty hot. Well, that's going to do it for today. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to hang out. Hopefully we find Tavarish in the next episode or two. I'm beginning to worry a little bit about him, but I'm Jared. I'd like to remind you to go ahead and wrench every day.